It was the 21st birthday party for my twin brother and me. As the one groomed since childhood to be the heir, I expected my grandfather to hand me the family's signet ring, the symbol of leadership over our empire. Instead, my grandfather gave the ring to Leo, my good-for-nothing party boy brother. Every relative in the room turned to stare at me, their expressions a mix of pity and morbid curiosity. In that exact moment, I heard my brother's thoughts loud and clear. Huh, you absolute idiot. All those years you spent slaving away, learning management, leading projects. It was all just to pave the way for me. Too bad you weren't born first. He was an empty suit who couldn't even read a financial statement. He had no business running a corner store, let alone a multi-billion-dollar corporation. As I watched Leo smugly accept the ring, even feigning humility by clapping me on the shoulder, and saw my own fiancée shyly raise a glass to toast him, I finally understood. To them, nothing mattered but the archaic tradition of the firstborn son. If that was how they wanted to play it, then so be it. It was only natural that I would announce my immediate resignation, renounce my inheritance, and take the entire core team I had personally built with me. 1. The changing of the guard in the grand ballroom of the Blackwood family's Upper East Side mansion. The crystal chandeliers fractured light across the room, casting everyone's faces in a flattering, deceitful glow. Today was my 21st birthday, which I shared with my brother, Leo. It was also the day of the succession ceremony for Blackwood Enterprises. I am Julian Blackwood, groomed since birth to be the heir. I started interning at the company at 15, led my first 9-figure project at 17, and by 19, I was effectively running the corporation's most critical divisions. Everyone in this room, everyone in our world, believed that tonight my grandfather would place the Blackwood signet ring on my finger, passing the torch to me. I held a champagne flute, a practiced smile fixed on my face as I accepted congratulations from all sides. Julian, my boy, you've done incredible things. The future of the family is in your hands. Damn right. We old-timers have watched you grow up. We know you're the one. I nodded graciously to each of them, but my eyes were locked on my grandfather, seated at the head of the room. He wore a bespoke velvet smoking jacket, looking every bit the patriarch, his hands turning over a small, dark mahogany box. Inside that box was the key to the Blackwood Empire. A hired MC was warming up the crowd, building the atmosphere to a fever pitch. Finally, my grandfather stood up. The room fell silent. He cleared his throat, his voice still commanding. Today is the 21st birthday of my 2 grandsons. It is also the day I finally step down and retire. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the guests before landing on me. There was a flicker of something in his eyes I couldn't decipher, something complex and unsettling. My heart began to beat a little faster. According to the Blackwood family charter, he declared, the leadership of this family and the company it controls shall pass to the firstborn son. My blood ran cold. The firstborn son? Leo and I were twins. He was born 3 minutes before me. Could 3 minutes, 3 meaningless minutes, erase 21 years of relentless effort? I watched as my grandfather opened the mahogany box and lifted out the heavy, gold signet ring. Then he walked right past me. He stopped in front of Leo, who was standing beside me with a lazy, half-amused smirk on his face. Leo Blackwood, from this day forward, you are the head of this family and the chairman of Blackwood Enterprises. Remember your duty as the firstborn. Leo's smirk dissolved into stunned disbelief, then pure, unadulterated ecstasy. He practically snatched the ring from our grandfather's hand. Thank you, grandfather. I promise I won't let you down. The ballroom was utterly silent. Every eye in the room swiveled to me like a bank of spotlights. I could feel their pity, their ridicule, their sick satisfaction. The muscles in my face strained to hold my polite smile in place. And that's when a voice, clear as a bell, exploded in my mind. Yes, I won. I always knew it. 3 extra minutes in the womb made me the crown prince. And Julian, that moron, all his studying, all his all-nighters, all that stress. It was all for me. God, this feels good. So damn good. My head snapped up. I stare at Leo. He was holding the ring aloft, his face a mask of triumphant arrogance. Yet the words coming out of his mouth were, Julian, I'm going to need your help, brother. We'll do this together. That voice. It was his thoughts. I never knew. I could hear his thoughts. Perhaps the sheer, crushing weight of this humiliation had unlocked some dormant ability. Leo strode over and clapped me hard on the shoulder, the gesture heavy with condescension. Look at his dead-inside expression. It's hilarious. Spent his whole life playing Mr. Perfect, thinking he had it in the bag. What a joke. In the old man's heart, I was always the chosen one. My fingernails dug so deep into my palm, I thought I might draw blood. Just then, my fiancée, Sophia Vance, glided toward Leo, holding her own glass of champagne. She was wearing the couture gown I'd bought for her, a faint blush on her cheeks, her eyes full of meaning. "Leo, congratulations," she said, her voice soft. "To the new chairman." She didn't even glance at me, and I heard her thoughts, too. Thank God my mother told me to bet on the older twin. What does it matter if Julian is smarter? A dynasty like the Blackwoods only cares about tradition and the line of succession. I play my cards right. Soon, I'll be Mrs. Chairman of the board. So that was it. In their eyes, all my work, all my ambition, all my success was worth less than 3 minutes. Their sacred traditions were nothing more than an excuse to prop up an incompetent fool and sideline anyone with actual talent. I watched Leo drain the glass Sophia offered him, his thumb brushing against the back of her hand with a suggestive stroke. I watched my grandfather stroke his beard, a look of profound satisfaction on his face, as if he'd just made the wisest decision of his life. I watched our relatives swarm Leo, a sycophantic chorus of flattery, as I faded into the background. The last flicker of reason in my mind was consumed by a cold, quiet rage. I slowly uncurled my fist, and I began to laugh. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the noise, and the room once again fell silent. I walked to the stage, picked up the microphone, and stepped into the spotlight. Thank you, everyone, for coming to my and my brother's birthday party. I put a slight, sharp emphasis on the word brother. My grandfather's right. The Blackwood family has its traditions. The old man nodded, a look of approval on his face. Good boy. You know your place. Help your brother, and you'll be taken care of. Leo just watched me with a sneer. Keep pretending, you phony. Let's see how long you can keep the act up. My gaze swept across the silent room, my voice ringing out, firm and clear. And since the Blackwoods value the firstborn traditions so dearly, it's only right that the second son knows his place. I, Julian Blackwood, before all of you, hereby announce, I voluntarily renounce any and all rights to the Blackwood inheritance. And as of this moment, I am resigning from Blackwood Enterprises effective immediately. A collective gasp swept through the room. My grandfather shot to his feet, his finger trembling as he pointed at me. What did you say? You ungrateful child. I ignored him. Furthermore, the division I personally founded, Project Horizon, including its core team, all proprietary data, client lists, and the next 3 years of its strategic roadmap, is my intellectual property. So it's only natural, I concluded, that they'll be coming with me. I dropped the mic. It hit the stage with a thud that echoed in the dead silence. As I walked past Leo, I heard his panicked thoughts. What? Take the team? What the hell is Project Horizon? Isn't that a company project? No, stop him. He can't leave. He reached out to grab my arm. I shot him a look of pure ice. Mr. Chairman, I said coldly, control yourself. From a corner of the ballroom, a young man in a sharp suit stood up. It was David Chum, my right-hand man. He picked up his jacket from the back of his chair and turned to the 2 tables of people behind him. Julian's leaving, he said calmly. What are we still doing here? Pack your things. We report to the new office tomorrow. Yes, sir. The 24 people at those tables, the entire core of Blackwood's tech, marketing, and R&D divisions, rose as one. They followed me out of the ballroom without a single backward glance. Behind us, the silence was absolute, leaving my worthless brother clutching a signet ring that was suddenly burning a hole in his hand, and my grandfather with a face like thunder. 2. A clean break. Stepping out of the mansion, the cool night air was a relief, washing away the cloying scent of expensive perfume and hypocrisy. David caught up to me, draping a coat over my shoulders. The cars are ready, Julian. I nodded and slid into the back of a black sedan. Behind us, the 24 members of my team quietly boarded a series of other cars. No one asked questions. Their loyalty was clear. These were the people I had personally recruited from the best universities, the ones I had mentored. We had pulled countless all-nighters together, broken through impossible barriers. Our bond went far beyond a simple paycheck. The car pulled away smoothly from the manicured streets of the Upper East Side. In the rearview mirror, the Blackwood mansion, the place I once thought was my home, shrank into the distance. My phone began vibrating violently. It was my grandfather. I declined the call and blocked his number. The next call was from Leo. I answered it. "Julian, what the hell do you think you're doing? You get your ass back here right now." He screamed into the phone. "Mr. Chairman," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "Watch your tone. We're not brothers anymore. We're competitors." Competitors? With what? Don't you forget the clothes on your back, the money in your account. It's all from this family. I already had grandfather freeze all your accounts. Let's see how you plan to pay that team of yours now. I let out a short, sharp laugh. Thanks for the heads up, but I think the bonuses and personal investments I've made over the years will be more than enough to get my new venture off the ground. With that, I hung up. Leo had no idea that since I turned 18, I had been funneling my project bonuses and personal investment returns into a private fund. I never put all my faith in others, not even family. It turned out I was right not to. A moment later, Sophia's name flashed on the screen. My eyes turned to ice. I answered, and her tear-choked voice came through. "Julian, don't be rash. I know you're hurting right now, but your grandfather is an old man. You can't do this to him. Just come back, apologize, and I'm sure we can smooth this all over." "Smooth this over?" I scoffed. "Sophia, that's not what you were thinking when you were toasting the new chairman." She gasped. There was a stunned silence on the other end. I was just trying to de-escalate the situation. "You know my heart is with you, Julian." "Is it?" I cut her off. "Then you're welcome to give your heart to the new head of the family. We're finished." I ended the call and blocked her number, too. Finally, peace and quiet. From the front seat, David handed back a tablet. "Here's the updated business plan for Project Horizon that the team put together tonight. I've also outlined the process for registering the new company. Take a look when you have a chance." I took the tablet. Staring at the dense text and data on the screen, the cold knot of betrayal in my chest began to loosen, replaced by the familiar fire of ambition. "The company name?" I said. "Let's call it Nexus Innovations." "Nexus Innovations," David repeated, his eyes lighting up. "I like it. A new beginning." We worked through the night, securing a lease on an entire floor of a downtown skyscraper. The next morning, when the employees at Blackwood Enterprises arrived to find the entire core of their tech and marketing divisions had vanished, chaos erupted. Leo sat in the chairman's office, a deer in the headlights, as department heads delivered one frantic report after another. "Sir, the final proposal for the Northwind acquisition is due today. Where's the project lead?" "Mr. Blackwood, the lead was Mark Renner from R&D. He left with Julian yesterday." "What about the digital marketing campaign for the West End development?" "It's supposed to launch next week. The manager for that campaign was Sarah Jenkins from marketing, sir." She's gone too." Leo slammed his fist on the desk in a fit of impotent rage. Through an old contact still at Blackwood, I was getting a live feed of the boardroom meltdown. "Traitors. A bunch of goddamn traitors. What kind of spell did Julian cast on them?" "Fine. Let them go. The world keeps spinning. We'll hire new people, throw money at the problem until it goes away." Soon, Blackwood's HR department was desperately trying to recruit top talent. They quickly discovered that no one with any real skill wanted to touch the mess Julian Blackwood had left behind. Everyone knew Project Horizon was Julian's baby. Its complex architecture and market strategy were a black box to outsiders. 3 days later, following news of the mass exodus and the stalling of key projects, Blackwood Enterprises stock plummeted by 10%. Leo was in over his head, and our new company, Nexus Innovations, officially opened its doors. 3. Nexus Innovations. There was no grand opening for Nexus Innovations. Just the 20-something of us, the founding team, popping a bottle of champagne in our new, empty office. "To the team," I said, raising my glass. "We used to build an empire for the Blackwoods. From today forward, we build one for ourselves." "To Julian." "To Nexus." The energy in the room was electric. These people were the best of the best, And now, freed from the suffocating bureaucracy of Blackwood Enterprises, their creativity was unleashed. Our first order of business was to finalize Project Horizon's core product, a revolutionary new smart home operating system. We optimized it, upgraded it, and prepared for an early market launch. This system was supposed to be the flagship product for Blackwood in the second half of the year. Now, it would be the weapon that put Nexus Innovations on the map. Meanwhile, Blackwood Enterprises was imploding. The so-called experts Leo had poached with outrageous salaries were completely stumped by the half-finished code we'd left behind. In a board meeting, they pontificated to save face. Mr. Blackwood, with all due respect, the code architecture left by the previous team is a complete mess. It's esoteric, overly ambitious, and has zero commercial viability. He's right. The foundational logic is flawed. We recommend scrapping it and starting over from scratch. Listening to the recording my contact sent me, I had a laugh. They couldn't understand it, so they called it garbage. And Leo, the idiot, actually believed them. So this is the junk Julian was working on all this time, and he treated it like it was the Holy Grail. Fine, scrap it. I'll show them what a real genius can do. With a single signature, Leo approved the new team's proposal, abandoning a project that was 90% complete to start over from zero. This decision alone would cost Blackwood tens of millions in sunk costs, and set them back by at least 6 months. My grandfather, though officially retired, heard about the decision. He summoned Leo to the mansion and tore into him. "You fool, do you have any idea what this means? All the capital we invested in the first half of the year is gone. Down the drain." Leo, however, was defiant. "Grandfather, the new experts all agree. What Julian left behind was a hollow shell. You can't keep thinking he's perfect. He's the enemy now." The old man is so biased. Even now, he's still protecting Julian. I have to prove them all wrong. I have to show them I can do this on my own. In the end, my grandfather couldn't change his mind and let him proceed with a heavy sigh. I seized the window of opportunity he had given me. A month later, Nexus Innovations held its first press conference. I stood on stage under the bright lights and personally unveiled our smart home system, Aura, to the world's media and potential investors. "The Aura system will redefine the way you live," I announced. "It's not just a controller. It's an intelligent butler that understands you, with a user experience, intuitive design, and universal compatibility that was light years ahead of anything on the market. Aura's debut created a shockwave through the tech industry. On the day of the launch, we signed strategic partnerships with 3 of the nation's top luxury real estate developers. The initial orders totaled over $50 million. Nexus Innovations became an overnight sensation. Our office phones were ringing off the hook. Back at Blackwood Enterprises, their new team had just barely finalized a preliminary framework for their competing product. When Leo saw me on the news, confident and in command, and watched the dazzling demonstrations of the Aura system, he flew into a rage and shattered an antique vase in his office. "Impossible. That's impossible. That was the project I scrapped. How could he have perfected it in a single month?" He finally realized he'd been played by his expensive experts. What he had thrown away as garbage was, in fact, a gold mine poised to disrupt the entire industry. And he had personally handed it to me. The Blackwood stock took another nosedive. In the boardroom, the uncles and cousins who had once backed my grandfather's decision were starting to sing a different tune. "Look at this mess. Julian leaves, and the company's core business completely falls apart. And now he's using our own project to compete against us. What a disaster." My grandfather sat at the head of the table, his face a grim, stony mask. "Julian, that viper, he's grown wings, and now he's coming back to bite the hand that fed him." He had no idea. This was only the beginning. 4. The Blackwood crisis, the success of the Aura system cemented Nexus Innovations as a major player in the industry. We capitalized on our momentum, aggressively expanding our market share. In less than 3 months, we had captured 30% of the high-end smart home market in North America. The company's valuation skyrocketed. Blackwood Enterprises, on the other hand, was in a death spiral. In a desperate panic, Leo began making wild, impulsive investments in unrelated sectors, trying to find a new cash cow. One day, he'd listened to some tech guru and pour $100 million into a VR social media platform because the metaverse is the future. The next, he'd see a popular influencer and throw $50 million at building a live-streaming e-commerce division. Every single venture failed, hemorrhaging money. The company's cash reserves were being incinerated. Through his thoughts, I could witness every foolish decision as it formed in his mind. The metaverse is blowing up. If I get in early, I'll make a killing. Then we'll see who's better, me or Julian. This streamer is gorgeous, and she has millions of followers. If she sells our products, we'll be rich. And maybe we could get to know each other personally. His mind was never on running a business. It was on finding shortcuts, feeding his ego, and satisfying his impulses. He was treating a multi-billion-dollar corporation like his personal playground. One afternoon, as I was reviewing quarterly reports, an unexpected call came through. It was Sophia Vance's mother. "Julian, dear, it's Susan," she said, her voice 100 times warmer than I'd ever heard it. "Is there something you need?" I asked, my tone flat. "Oh, don't be such a stranger. I booked a table at Per Se tonight. Sophia has missed you terribly. I thought the two of you could have dinner, catch up." Before I could answer, I heard her real thoughts, buzzing with excitement. This kid is the new king. Nexus is already worth almost as much as Blackwood. Sophia was a fool to let him go. I have to get them back together. Once they're married, Nexus will be half ours. A truly masterful plan. "No, thank you," I said coldly. "Sophia and I are done. Besides, I'm very busy." "Don't say that, Julian," she insisted, a note of panic in her voice. "Sophia has always loved you. She only broke things off because Leo pressured her. She's just a young woman. How could she stand up to a man like that? She had no choice. Just get him to the restaurant. Once he sees Sophia, looking as beautiful as she does, he won't be able to resist." "Is that so?" I asked casually. Was her hardship that she couldn't become the chairman's wife soon enough? The other end of the line went dead silent. Mrs. Vance clearly hadn't expected me to be so blunt. After a few seconds, she let out a forced, awkward laugh. "Julian, you must have misunderstood. I think your daughter and I both understand the situation perfectly. Don't call me again. Otherwise, I can't guarantee what might happen to the Vance family stock price. It would be a shame if it started looking as ugly as Blackwood's." I hung up the phone. With people, that shameless politeness is a waste of time. Only a direct threat would register. True to form, the Vances never bothered me again. Sophia's life, I heard, had taken a downturn. Leo was too busy with his partying and womanizing to give his backup fiancée a second thought. And because her family had backed the wrong horse, their social standing had cratered. Rumor had it she tried to approach me at several galas, only to be politely but firmly blocked by my security detail. I never spared her a single glance. Some mistakes can't be undone, and I had no time to waste on trivial people and their pathetic games. My goal was singular: to completely dismantle the corrupt, decaying institution that was Blackwood Enterprises, a family that valued 3 minutes of birth order over 2 decades of dedication. 5. The truth comes out: Blackwood Enterprises was on the verge of collapse. Leo's disastrous investments had become a black hole, sucking up the last of the company's liquid assets while revenue from its core businesses had fallen off a cliff. The banks were calling in their loans. Suppliers were demanding payment. Leo finally broke. He had no solutions, no ideas. His only move was to run back to the mansion and beg our grandfather for help. In the study, my grandfather stared at the latest financial statements, his hands trembling with rage. "Less than 6 months. Look what you've done to this company in less than 6 months. The legacy our family built over a century, and you've destroyed it." Leo fell to his knees, sobbing. "Grandfather, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please, help me one more time. Just one last time. The old man has to have a private fortune. If he'll just use it to bail out the company, I can turn this all around. I know I can." My grandfather closed his eyes, his face etched with exhaustion and profound disappointment. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "There is one last option." "What is it?" Leo asked, clinging to the words like a drowning man to a life raft. "Go to Julian," my grandfather said, his voice heavy with resentment. "Beg him to come back. If he agrees, I will give him the signet ring. You will be his deputy." So, he was finally willing to admit his mistake. Too little, too late. Leo, upon hearing this, exploded. No, absolutely not. You want me to go begging to him and be his deputy? Why should I? I'm the firstborn. I'm the chairman. Grovel at his feet? I'd rather die. Who the hell does he think he is anyway? He's just some stray my parents picked up. Hold on. Stray? That thought hit me like a bolt of lightning. I had always been told we were twins. Everyone had said it my entire life. Could it be? I immediately had David use every resource at his disposal to dig up the record from the hospital where I was born 21 years ago. 3 days later, David placed a folder on my desk. Inside was a faded copy of a birth certificate and a DNA analysis report. The birth certificate listed my mother's name, as expected, but under the section for newborn information, there was only one name, Leo Blackwood. The DNA report was even more damning. The first test, comparing Leo's DNA to my parents', confirmed their biological relationship. The second test, comparing my DNA to my parents', showed no biological relationship. I wasn't a Blackwood at all. I was just a baby, born on the same day as Leo, who they had accidentally taken home from the hospital. No, not an accident. With the Blackwood family's power and influence, a mistake like that would have been discovered and corrected within days, not ignored for 2 decades. There was only one explanation. It was deliberate. Perhaps my so-called mother had only given birth to one child that day, a frail and sickly Leo. To save face, to ensure the dynasty had a healthy heir, they found me. Maybe they swapped me for a child of their own who didn't survive, or maybe they simply invented a twin. I was the backup plan. They raised me as the heir because they needed a plan B in case Leo's health failed. But now Leo was an adult, seemingly healthy enough, and the backup was no longer needed. He could be sacrificed. The whole firstborn son tradition was nothing but a convenient, cruel excuse to give everything to their real son. I stared at the DNA report, a chill spreading through my entire body. 21 years of upbringing, of education, of believing I was part of family. It was all an elaborate lie. Julian, was nothing more than a pawn in their game from the very beginning. 6. The acquisition, the truth, was a poisoned blade, severing the last, tenuous thread of sentiment I held for the Blackwood family. I felt no anger, no sadness, just a profound, terrifying calm. If I had no blood ties to them, then I had no reason to hold back. Under immense pressure from my grandfather, Leo finally, reluctantly, called me. He took a deep breath, then squeezed the words out through his teeth. Julian, are you free? We need to talk. Damn you, Julian. Just wait until I get my hands on the money. You're going to pay for this. I listened to his silent curses, my own voice even. What about? Grandfather said, if you agree to come back and help the company, he'll make you chairman. He said it in a rushed, humiliated whisper. Oh, I feigned surprise. Are you willing to give up your sacred throne as the firstborn son? Don't get cocky, he snapped, his true colors showing. If it weren't for a few minor issues, you think we'd ever call you? This is your last chance, Julian. Lure him back first. Once the company is stable, we'll find a reason to kick him out again. I'm the only one who can be chairman. Minor issues? I chuckled. As I recall, Blackwood Enterprises is over $2 billion in debt, and the banks are foreclosing next week. You call that a minor issue, Leo? He was speechless. You want me to come back? Fine, I said, changing my tone. I could almost hear his heart pounding through the phone. I knew it. This is what he wanted all along. He could never really leave the family. Here are my terms, I said, articulating each word with precision. You will call a general shareholders meeting. You will also invite the financial press. There, you and grandfather will, in front of everyone, personally hand me the signet ring and the chairman's appointment. And then, you will publicly apologize for your decision. You're insane, he shrieked. You want us to apologize to you? Who the hell do you think you are? Then there's nothing more to discuss, I said smoothly. You have 1 week to prepare for Blackwood's bankruptcy proceedings. I hung up the phone. I knew they would accept. For a man like my grandfather, whose entire identity was built on pride and public perception, allowing the family company to declare bankruptcy would be a fate worse than death. It would make them a laughingstock. As I predicted, 2 days later, my grandfather called me himself. His voice was frail and tired, stripped of its usual authority. Julian, we agree to your terms. The shareholders' meeting is on Friday. Please, come back. As long as we can save the company, a little humiliation is nothing. Once he's back and he's fixed everything, we'll have plenty of time to deal with him. He's still a Blackwood, deep down. He won't betray us again. I listened to his inner monologue, a cold smile touching my lips. A Blackwood? How amusing. Fine, I replied calmly. I'll be there on Friday. The news spread like wildfire through the financial world. Everyone assumed it was a story of redemption. The prodigal son returning to save his family from ruin, a dramatic reconciliation. They were all waiting to see how I, Julian, would work my magic and pull Blackwood Enterprises back from the brink. They didn't understand. I wasn't coming back to save it. I was coming back to bury it. 7. The bombshell Friday. The Blackwood Enterprises headquarters. Dressed in a tailored black suit, I walked into the familiar boardroom, flanked by my security team. The room was packed with shareholders and reporters from every major news outlet. Flashbulbs went off like a volley of gunfire. My grandfather sat at the head of the table, looking haggard. Beside him, Leo sat with his jaw clenched, his eyes red with suppressed rage. I walked to the opposite end of the table, to the chairman's seat, and sat down. Everyone's here. Let's begin, I said quietly. My grandfather looked at me, his expression unreadable. He picked up the microphone, his voice raspy. I've called this meeting today for one purpose. Due to a recent error in my judgment and Leo's inexperience, the company has fallen into a difficult position. He paused, gathering himself. After consulting with the board, we have unanimously decided to welcome Julian Blackwood back to the company. He will assume the role of chairman, with full authority over all corporate matters. He picked up the mahogany box with a signet ring and a stack of documents, and with trembling hands, he started to walk toward me. Every camera in the room focused on this single moment. The transfer of power. The beginning of a new era. Wait, I said. My voice cut through the air. He stopped. Everyone stared at me, confused. From my briefcase, I pulled out a stack of documents. I had David distribute a copy to every shareholder and every reporter in the room. Before I accept this position, I announced, there's something I'd like you all to see. My grandfather and Leo received their copies. As their eyes fell on the title in bold letters at the top of the first page, DNA paternity test report, the color drained from their faces. How? How could he know? It's impossible. Only his parents and I ever knew the truth. My grandfather's thoughts were a scream of pure panic. DNA? What is this? What is he doing? Leo's thoughts were a swirl of confusion and dread. I gave them no time to recover. I picked up the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed with this transfer of power, I need to correct a lie that has been maintained for 21 years. I, Julian Blackwood, am not the son of Arthur Blackwood. In your hands, you hold a DNA report confirming that I have no biological relationship with my supposed parents. You also have a copy of the official birth records from Manhattan General Hospital, dated 21 years ago. Those records show that on that day, Mrs. Blackwood gave birth to only one child, Leo. My voice was calm, but the words hit the room like a series of explosions. Shareholders and reporters alike stared, their mouths agape. What is he talking about? Not a Blackwood? Then who is he? My God, this is the story of the year. My grandfather pointed a trembling finger at me, his lips moving but no sound coming out. Finally, he croaked, "You're lying." Am I? I fixed him with a cold stare. You know the truth better than anyone. 21 years ago, Leo was born sickly. You were afraid he wouldn't survive, leaving the Blackwood line without an heir. So you arranged to acquire a healthy baby from the same hospital, and you told the world you had twins. Is that not right? I was that backup plan, the shadow you raised next to your precious son. I worked my fingers to the bone. I drove myself to the brink of exhaustion. I built value for this company, all to prove that I was a worthy investment. And then, on my 21st birthday, you decided Leo was healthy enough to take over, and you threw me away like a piece of trash. Did you really think I would come crawling back to save you? Every word was a dagger, twisting his heart. His face went from white to red, then to a ghastly purple. He clutched his chest and collapsed backward in his chair. Grandfather! Leo screamed, rushing to his side. The room erupted into chaos. I watched it all, my expression unmoved. I stood and straightened the lapels of my suit. Please, everyone, it was all just a business arrangement. There's no need to panic. My gaze swept over the stunned faces of the shareholders. I didn't come here today to take over this sinking ship, I said, my voice cutting through the noise. I came here to buy it. Buy it. My words brought the chaos to a momentary halt. An elderly shareholder, an old friend of my grandfather's, struggled to his feet and pointed at me. Julian, you ungrateful snake. After Arthur raised you for 21 years, this is how you repay him. I laughed. Repay him, Mr. Henderson? The profits I generated for Blackwood Enterprises far exceed the cost of my upbringing. Project Horizon alone brought in over $1 billion in net profit. Shall we audit the books? Besides, I continued, my voice hardening, I'm not a snake. I'm a businessman. And businessmen talk about one thing, value. I signaled to David, who began distributing a second set of documents. This is a formal acquisition offer from Nexus Innovations. Considering Blackwood Enterprises' current debt of over $2 billion and its imminent bankruptcy, we are offering to acquire a 51% controlling stake in the company for the symbolic price of $1. In exchange, we will assume all of its outstanding debts. Of course, I added, as a gesture of goodwill, all current shareholders will be given the option to exchange their soon-to-be worthless Blackwood stock for 0.1% stake in Nexus Innovations' original shares. A tidal wave of murmurs swept through the room. Exchange shares in a bankrupt, debt-ridden company for original shares in a tech giant valued at over $3 billion and growing exponentially? This wasn't an acquisition. It was a golden parachute. Mr. Henderson, who had just been calling me a snake, now stood frozen, staring at the offer sheet in his trembling hands. They were all capitalists. No one walks away from a deal like that. They all knew Blackwood was finished. This was their one and only chance to escape the wreckage. I accept the offer, a younger shareholder shouted, jumping to his feet. Me too. I'm out. This family's drama is their own problem. I accept. Once the first domino fell, the rest followed in quick succession. In less than 5 minutes, every shareholder in the room, representing over 40% of the company's external stock, had agreed to the terms. Combined with the shares I had been quietly acquiring on the open market, I now controlled over 51% of Blackwood Enterprises. The company was mine. The sound of sirens grew louder as paramedics rushed into the boardroom and loaded my unconscious grandfather onto a stretcher. Leo, looking utterly broken, trailed behind them. As he passed me, he stopped, his eyes bloodshot with hatred. You'll burn in hell for this, Julian. I heard his inner scream. He took everything from me. How could he do this? I'll kill him. I swear to God, I'll kill him. I simply looked at him. Leo, this was all decided the moment you saw me as a fool and treated my life's work as your personal stepping stone. Everything you've lost today is nothing more than the consequence of your own actions. Take care, grandfather. I'll have accounting send you a monthly stipend for your living expenses. After all, I said, my voice laced with the same condescending pity they had once shown me. I'm not an ungrateful person. He trembled with a rage so profound he couldn't speak, then stumbled out of the room after the paramedics. The remaining shareholders were already lining up to sign the exchange agreements with David, their faces alight with the joy of narrowly escaping financial ruin. I walked to the vast floor-to-ceiling window and looked down at the city, a sprawling map of power and ambition. My era had just begun. 9. Sophia's Gambit, my grandfather had a massive stroke. He survived, but just barely. The man who had once commanded boardrooms with an iron fist was left partially paralyzed and unable to speak clearly. He was confined to a hospital bed for the rest of his days. Leo stayed by his side, his heart filled with a useless, simmering hatred. There was nothing he could do. With the changing of ownership, all his personal assets, which were tied up in company stock, had been frozen and liquidated. He was now completely dependent on the monthly stipend I provided. After taking control of Blackwood Enterprises, I initiated a radical restructuring. The first step was firing all the useless relatives who held do-nothing jobs, along with the sycophantic experts Leo had hired. The company was full of whispers and complaints, but they were powerless. Julian is purging the family. He's turning our company into his personal dictatorship. Leo thought when he heard the news. He was right. My empire had no room for deadweight. Next, I merged the core operations of Nexus Innovations with the salvageable parts of Blackwood Enterprises. Using the Aura system as the technological backbone, we revitalized Blackwood's old real estate and home appliance divisions. We introduced the concept of the fully integrated smart home, breathing new life into legacy industries. In just 6 months, the newly formed company, rebranded as the Nexus Group, was not only profitable, but its stock value had surpassed Blackwood's historical peak. The merger created a titan of industry worth over $10 billion, and I was its undisputed king. One day, David knocked on my office door. "Julian, a Miss Sophia Vance is in the lobby. She insists on seeing you." I didn't look up from the document I was signing. "Send her up." A few minutes later, Sophia walked in. She looked tired, and the designer suit she wore was from last season. She stood before my desk, biting her lip, her eyes wide with a practiced vulnerability. "Julian," I signed the last page, closed the folder, and finally looked up at her, as if she were a complete stranger. "What do you want, Sophia?" She took a deep breath. I heard about your grandfather. I know things are difficult for Leo right now. "Julian, I know you're angry, but they did raise you for 21 years. For the sake of the past, couldn't you give Leo another chance? Even a small job at the company." Her voice was gentle, her expression sincere, playing the part of the compassionate ex-lover perfectly. But her thoughts told a different story. Leo is a lost cause, and the Blackwoods are finished. Julian is the one with all the power now. I have to get back with him. If I act kind and forgiving, he'll remember how good we were together. All men fall for that. Once we're back together, who gives a damn about Leo? I leaned back in my chair, watching her performance with a kind of detached amusement. "Sophia, what makes you think you're in any position to negotiate with me?" Her face paled. I just think it's right to be merciful." "Merciful?" I cut her off. "Where was your mercy when you and your family were treating me like an idiot? Where was your mercy when you turned your back on me to toast the man who had just humiliated me, dreaming of becoming the chairman's wife?" She was speechless. "And another thing," I said, standing up and walking around the desk to stand over her. "Did you really think I didn't know why you're here today? You want to get back together? You want to be the queen of this $10 billion empire?" My voice was quiet, but she recoiled as if I had shouted. "He knows. How can he know exactly what I'm thinking?" She looked at me with genuine terror, as if I were some kind of monster. I leaned in close, my voice a whisper next her ear. "Save your pathetic little schemes. To me, you're not even as valuable as a suit that's gone out of style. Get out, and don't ever let me see you again." Sophia stumbled backward, her face as white as a sheet, and fled my office in tears. I didn't have the time or energy to waste on people like her. 10. The narrative war. After his public humiliation, Leo wasn't content to fade away. He took the money I sent him each month and used it to launch a smear campaign against me. He painted me as a ruthless usurper who had driven his own grandfather to a stroke and stolen his family's company out of spite. Certain tabloids, hungry for clicks, ran with the story, embellishing it with every sordid detail they could invent. Overnight, I was cast as the villain, the modern symbol of corporate greed and familial betrayal. David stormed into my office and slammed a newspaper down on my desk. "Julian, this has gone too far. We need to sue them for libel." "No," I said, glancing at the cartoonishly evil photo of me on the front page. Let him make as much noise as he wants." I could hear Leo's desperate thoughts from across the city. "That's it. Make it bigger. Expose Julian for the monster he is. I'll ruin his reputation. The shareholders will turn on him, and I'll get my company back." His naivete was almost charming. Did he really think public opinion had any power over capital? I let him fan the flames. He hired bots and trolls to flood social media, crafting a narrative of himself as the tragic, wronged hero. Then, at the peak of the media frenzy, I granted an exclusive one-on-one interview to Forbes. During the interview, I didn't refute a single accusation. I simply and calmly told the entire truth. I presented the DNA report. I detailed the story of being raised as a backup son, only to be cast aside. And I provided the meticulously documented financial records showing how, in just a few months, Leo's incompetence had driven a century-old company to the brink of a $2 billion bankruptcy. When the facts, cold, hard, and undeniable, were laid bare for the world to see, the tide of public opinion didn't just turn. It became a tsunami. The sympathy people had for Leo curdled into contempt. He was a fraud who had usurped a position he didn't earn, and a fool who had destroyed everything he was given. He became a laughingstock. People pointed and whispered when he walked down the street. No company would hire him. He was a pariah. The psychological toll was far more devastating than the loss of his wealth. Not long after, I heard he had a complete mental breakdown. He was found wandering outside the Nexus Group headquarters, wearing an ill-fitting old suit, telling passers-by that he was the real chairman. I saw him once from the tinted window of my car. His hair was greasy, his eyes were vacant, and he was muttering to himself, "I'm the chairman. Julian is a thief. This is my building." I told my driver to move on, my face impassive. Was it tragedy? Perhaps, but it was a tragedy of his own making. 11. Settling accounts. After his breakdown, Leo was committed to a psychiatric hospital. The news was the final blow to my grandfather's already failing health. A few weeks later, he passed away. He had asked to see me one last time. I went. Lying in the hospital bed, he was a pale shadow of his former self. When he saw me, tears streamed from his cloudy eyes. He gripped my hand with surprising strength, his voice a slurred, desperate rasp, repeating 3 words over and over. "I'm so sorry." I could hear his final thoughts, fragmented and full of regret. I was wrong. So wrong. If I had chosen you, the family, wouldn't I failed you, and I failed our ancestors. I said nothing. I just sat with him until his grip loosened and his hand fell away. I closed his eyes for him. The grudges, the betrayals, the pain, it all seemed to dissipate with his last breath. As his adopted son, I arranged the funeral. Not many people came. The relatives I had fired hated me too much to show their faces. The Vance family made an appearance. Sophia's father tried to speak to me, but I silenced him with a single cold look. Sophia stood in the distance, watching me with a haunted expression. She was thinner than I'd ever seen her. I'd heard her family, desperate to forge a new alliance, was planning to marry her off to a man more than twice her age. Her fate was no longer my concern. After the service, I stood alone before the new gravestone for a long time. The wind rustled through the cypress trees, whispering secrets to the dead. My life up to this point felt like a bizarre dream. Chosen, raised, discarded, and reborn from the ashes of betrayal. Now it was over. I placed a bouquet of white lilies on the fresh earth. Goodbye, grandfather. And goodbye to the naive young man I once was, the one who believed that hard work and loyalty would always be enough. 12. An infinite future 1 year later. The Nexus Group Tower was the new crown jewel of the city skyline. As its chairman, my face was on the cover of Time, which dubbed me one of the titans of tomorrow. My life was full. David was now the company's CEO, a brilliant leader in his own right. Together, we were expanding our empire across the globe. Sometimes I thought about the past, about that lavish birthday party, Leo's arrogant smirk, Sophia's calculated toast, my grandfather's conflicted gaze. The memories that once burned with anger and humiliation now felt distant, like scenes from a movie about someone else's life. I no longer needed to hear anyone's thoughts to know where I stood. I was the master of my own destiny, powerful enough to be indifferent to the world's hidden machinations. The strange ability I'd gained on that fateful night had faded away, its purpose served. It had opened my eyes and set me free. One evening, at a charity gala, I met a man who stopped me in my tracks. He was the founder of a small but innovative robotics firm, and he looked startlingly like an older version of me. He approached me, looking nervous, and held out a business card. "Mr. Blackwood, an honor. My name is Alan Martell." I took the card, a wild suspicion forming in my mind. I had David run a background check. The results confirmed it. 22 years ago, his wife had given birth to a son at Manhattan General. The baby was diagnosed with a severe congenital heart defect and given less than a year to live. The couple was devastated, and, lacking the funds for the experimental treatment, was informed that their son had passed away 3 days after his birth. The hospital issued a death certificate. The date was 1 day before the Blackwoods adopted me. It all clicked into place. I was the child who was supposed to have died. The Blackwoods had used their power and money to fake my death, pay for the surgery that saved my life, and then raised me as their own, a thoroughbred kept in reserve. I looked across the room at Alan Martell, who was now passionately explaining a schematic to another guest. He had no idea his son was still alive, and that his son had become a man he could only dream of meeting. I decided not to tell him. The past was the past. Ripping open old wounds would bring us both more pain than peace. Instead, I had David arrange for the Nexus Group's venture capital division to make a substantial, anonymous investment in his company, giving him the resources to achieve his dreams. It was the only thing I could do to honor a connection that was never meant to be. As I left the hotel, the city lights glittered below like a fallen constellation. I looked up at the endless night sky. My life was finally my own, free from the shadows of lies and manipulation. Before me, there was only the bright, infinite future I had built for myself. End.